Hi there, Laine. I just wanted to say thank you for joining me on our conversation today. Before we get started, would like to hear a little bit about your accounting practice and how you help your clients.
Okay, well, I am Laine Proctor, the QuickBooks doctor. I have a full service bookkeeping and virtual CFO service where I basically do all of the monthly bookkeeping for my clients, depending on their needs, and meet with them and guide them through the twists and turns of being a small business owner in today's economy.
And part of the things that I wanted to really focus on is some of the changes that you've been making in your own practice over the past year or so. And what were things like before you and I met and we started working together?
Well, things were interesting. I worked with my clients mostly on an hourly basis and at varying rates. There was a lot of tracking of hours, and sometimes, often, most times, I was drawn into doing a lot of work that was not really something that had initially been planned upon or spoken about. And then there was some negotiation normally that happened over the ultimate price that was charged.
Mm-hmm. As you found the scope creep occurring, were there things where you felt you were doing work for free without it getting compensated?
Definitely. And part of the challenge that I always found with an hourly basis was when I went to bill, being like, oh, I don't think that I recorded all of that. To work in that way is almost a full-time job in and of itself, to record everything that you do. So
there's a lot of time spent tracking and then invoicing and then chasing. Was there something specific that had you get to the point where you were looking for a change and before we started to work together?
Well, I had in my various circles that I participate in Facebook groups and those types of things and conferences that I'd gone to, really heard people talking about going to an advisory services model. And I was very interested in it, but so caught up, I think, in the day-to-day of running my business that I just did not know where to begin.
It sounds like you knew what you wanted. You just didn't know the steps as to how to make that transition in your practice.
That's very accurate.
And when we first met and we talked about how to be able to achieve those things, were there any obstacles that you experienced before you decided to move forward and for us to work together?
I would say that the main obstacle was my own belief. Committing to working a year ahead of time, and the amount of money that I was investing in, having not seen or had the opportunity to see into the future, the kind of shift that I was going to be able to make. It was a big commitment. So, I would say fear, trepidation.
And I think that's probably for everybody, because it's not just about investing in my services. It's really about an investment in yourself also.
Exactly.
And so were there any particular fears that maybe came up or caused you to hesitate? Because I think that what you're talking about is so important when you're asked to do something that feels different than what you've been doing.
Yes. So for me, the idea of, I would say, imposter syndrome. This is, an idea that comes up a lot in some of the other groups that I'm in, and sometimes in our group even. But the idea that if I ask people to increase the rate that they're paying me, then I'm going to have to explain every little thing that I'm doing to them, or I'm going to have to be able to somehow verbalize everything that I know to them, or that I'm going to have to justify myself in some way, as if it was my responsibility to represent my value, other than assuming that they're going to perceive that.
Now, I understand those are all relevant because once you start asking for more money, then there's higher expectations that you believe your clients are going to have. Did any of those fears actually come true?
I don't think so. I think the opposite was true. I think I was surprised how much I got to experience the value that my clients placed in the relationship that we had.
Nice. I really appreciate you sharing that. And so let's kind of like dig in a little bit. Any specific strategies which grew your bank account as well as started to free up your time?
Definitely. The strategy of going into each new client relationship with a diagnostic has been huge for me because, and I just was having a conversation with a potential client about this before we met today, because clients will downplay or just really have no idea of how much work is going to be required when you meet with them because they don't do bookkeeping and accounting. So to be able to say the first stage is a diagnostic so that I can get a very accurate idea of the amount of work that's going to be required has not only helped me to price more accurately, but created another revenue stream in the diagnostic, you know, and I have no problem telling people you can take this and compare prices and go somewhere else if you want to. It's really a roadmap for you to keep. So I feel that even in that sense, I'm providing a great deal of value.
Well, one of the things I'd like to just explain a little bit more because not everybody's maybe familiar with that. Can you just share a little bit more about what you mean when you say the diagnostic and how you created another revenue stream with that?
Sure. So before, it's rare that a client will come to me with totally clean books or without some level of cleanup or corrections that need to be made or catch up from several months of work that hasn't been done. And normally before I would just, you know, get them started on an hourly rate with an expectation of what the normal hours would be, then I would have to spend so much more hours and then end up only charging for part of the hours I spent because I didn't want to give them this huge bill and scare them away when I first started working with them. So I was leaving a lot of money on the table. So what I do now with the diagnostic is actually get the lay of the land before I start doing any actual work. I just analyze the system, where they're at and where they need to go to get current and accurate.
And with that being said, then let's kind of talk about the quote that you give. How do you actually start to analyze and maybe use that to quote that project for value instead of how many hours it's going to take?
Well, I talk to the client based on what I see, the amount of work that's going to need to be done, but I also talk to them about where their business is going, the type of guidance that they want, because one thing I realized through working with you is that I was always providing a lot of guidance to my clients. And it's really interesting that I started working with you in the middle of the pandemic as well, because that experience only highlighted for me what a benefit it is for a small business client to have someone like me on their team when things are in flux, especially with all of these government loans and stuff. So I start talking to them about things like the types of guidance that they want, where they want to grow, and what their goals are, and being a partner with their business, and get an idea of how much interaction they want to have. And that really contributes to the overall value pricing.
One of the things that you're mentioning, and I really just want to highlight it, is by these conversations, you are actually explaining to them that you come in from the place of partnership. You want them to succeed.
Yes.
The other part of it is by approaching it this way, you're really focusing on the advisory and the expertise that you bring to the table as opposed to the technical aspects. Does that feel true?
Yes, very much so.
And one of the things I know now that we're kind of like looking at the pricing part is the thought of raising rates. It's something that a lot of accounting professionals think about for months or even years, or think about it and never even implement it. How long were you possibly thinking about raising rates before you actually took that plunge and did something about it?
At least a year and a half. And beyond that, I would say 4 years. I had done some piecemeal, like, I'm going to raise this client's rate because it's really a lot of work, or, I think that we have the type of relationship that they won't push back. So I had done a little bit, but it was very, piecemeal and timid, I would say.
Which is actually true for most of us, because it's one of the scariest things that we can do. We have all these worries about, will we lose a client? Will they push back and challenge us? Why are you doing this and everything like that? So really want to say that you taking that step is significant. And so with that being said, share a little bit about how you maybe doubled your current client rates without having that pushback.
Well, I just had a conversation with my clients. I let them know the focus of the firm is changing. And part of the reason for that is that I want to make myself more available to partner with clients. I want to make myself more available to meet with clients, and I want to make myself more available to advise on higher level issues. And with small exception, I got no comment at all, and with those clients that were concerned, I was able to have a conversation with them and, bring up issues like consistency. With accounting, it's very important to have consistency. Issues like trust, and at the core of the relationship I have with most of my clients, there is a lot of trust there. And they were all able to see that the service that I provide to them has been very valuable, not only financially, but in terms of what I'm contributing to their peace of mind and their confidence as business owners.
Well, one of the things that I'm hearing as you started to make that change with your current clients is, instead of focusing on increased expenses on your end, and you haven't done a rate change for 3 years and we're just catching up now, you really focused on the client relationship and how this was going to benefit them.
Yes, that is true.
And anything that you feel that you've done over the past couple months to really fine tune your system and see how your income grew as a result of that?
Well, I've added to my team and I have definitely been working more on the analysis to the full-time, monthly bookkeeping transition, because there are really several conversations to be had along the way. And I've heard it be compared to sort of getting to know someone, to, to going out on a first date, to getting into the exclusive dating stage, to ultimately, getting married. And it is interesting in that way, so I would say that I've worked on that conversation with clients, like the proposal. Let's talk about your long-term goals. Let's talk about where you want to grow. Let's talk about what might get in the way of that. Let's talk about how I am going to be here to support you through all of that and hold you accountable.
The other thing that you mentioned in the beginning was about tracking time and invoicing. Has that changed at all?
Yes. Yes.
Can you
So
please
I,
expand upon that?
yes. So I'm 3/4 of the way, maybe through this process with my entire client base. But most of my clients now are on a fixed monthly fee rather than, or an annual or quarterly fee. So I incentivize clients to pay ahead of time and to make that commitment, basically. And they get a significant savings if they choose to do that. So some clients, I've already received payment for the entire year of 2021, and most of the rest I have on quarterly or monthly payments, but the payments just process rather than me having to scrape together hours and put everything together and wait for them. So I have automatic ACH agreements with my clients.
Do your clients prepay for the month, or are they paying after the monthly service has already been performed?
They prepay.
Okay, so they now
Yes.
prepay, which changes everything. Because you're no longer invoicing, do you still track time?
For me personally, I do not. My employees do, so that I can, next year analyze how that feeds into my overall pricing.
But that probably has freed up a lot of time for you, not having to then put it into invoices and then
Yes.
send it out and everything, and now wait for payments and arrears.
Yes, and it's really exciting that I have been able to start to do a lot of higher level analysis for my clients, and point out trends in their businesses and that things of that nature, suggest budgetary changes that I didn't really have the time to dig into before at the level that I would have liked.
One of the things that I've seen for me as I continue to move and make changes in my practice is that sometimes I get in my own way. I realize that I'm the bottleneck to my own business also as the business owner. Any hurdles that you found that you actually had to face or overcome as you made these changes in your practice?
Yes. So one is I have put into place a lot of technological changes to allow me. So this was sort of the follow-up of me being able to delegate more. So that would be number one is, getting real with myself about where are my strengths and what are not, and why am I still holding on to the things that are not my strengths, delegating those things, and then putting systems in place to make it easier to delegate those things. So I put a lot of things in place this year, like workflow processes, instant messaging, documentation processes that have helped the entire process along.
Nice. And because you now know how to value price your work, what do you see that's different in your business and your life? Because you shared some things with me recently that I was just so happy to hear.
Yeah. So I believe that when we first spoke, Loren, you were like, what, I don't remember the exact question you asked, but basically what would be a real game changer for you if you could accomplish it in this next year of us working together? And I was like, oh, get out of debt and buy a house, in like those seemed like pie in the sky things at the time that I said them. And I bought my first home 5 months ago now. And within the next couple of months, I will be out of credit card debt.
And I think you mentioned something about your car as well.
Oh yeah, my car will be paid off.
So the short time that we've been working together, you bought a house, you paid off your car, and in 2 more months, you will be debt-free as far as credit cards go.
Yes, if not sooner.
That's what I'm rooting for.
Yes.
So. but doing that is such an accomplishment. It changes how you look at yourself, as well as says something about how you now are looking at your business also.
Yes, that is certainly true.
Go ahead, Laine.
I was just going to say, looking back, I probably could have purchased a home sooner, but I think working with you and looking at my business in the way that you have helped me to see it gave me the confidence to make the move. So
thank you. And really what I see is now you're in a position where you run your business instead of your business running you.
yeah.
So when you get all these side requests and the scope creep, you now have the insights as to how to address it appropriately.
Yes, and that is something that I definitely do consistently now where I did not before. You know, I say, yes, that is an ad service and this is the price. And I have, you know, set prices for all of those things.
Mm-hmm. And those are difficult conversations to have in the beginning, because once again, you have that fear of, you don't want to disappoint someone, you don't want to have the pushback, and really get into that point. What I see is that not only is your business stronger, but you have personally grown as much as a result of some of the changes you've made and investing in yourself in this way.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Anything else that you feel you want to add that would be important to mention, Laine?
Well, I would say that the coaching conversation we had when we first spoke has more than delivered, and that has not always been my experience. In fact, has rarely been my experience. So I would say that I am very happy with the investment that I made in your coaching, and that it has more than far exceeded my expectations of the return on investment.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And then the other thing is, if somebody wanted to reach out and get in touch with you, how would they be able to do that?
They can go to my website, which is QB Doctor, short for QuickBooks, qbdoctor.biz, B-I-Z, or on Facebook at the QuickBooks Doctor. I am Laine Proctor, the QuickBooks Doctor.
Laine, thank you so much for taking time away to be able to have this conversation, to
My pleasure.
Some inspiration to somebody else who's been thinking about the pricing piece and hasn't quite made that leap yet. And by just sharing about some of the insights and the experience that you've had, you might be helping someone else to make that change for themselves as well. So I really
hope so. No problem. My pleasure.